and especially the free hormone hypothesis does not explain, is that the testosterone-bound SHBG is very important for our well-being, for being optimal.
So welcome back to the TRT and Hormone Optimization YouTube channel. And today we have a great guest. It's Ryan Roots. Welcome, Ryan.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So I appreciate it very much, you coming on the channel. And I listened to your 2-hour podcast on other channels like Matthew Cox's and a Concrete YouTube channel where you told your very interesting story. But maybe introduce yourself here shortly.
Okay, sure. First thing I want to say is, Dr. Davis, thank you for this channel and what you do for for the TRT community. You really help thousands and thousands of people, and it's greatly appreciated. Just want you to know that. Okay, yeah. So I guess introducing myself. I guess it started. Do you want me to go into like a short bio of my history?
Yeah, maybe do that.
Okay. So it started when I was younger. I was underdeveloped. I used to get picked on because I was really small and skinny. I didn't develop like my friends. Once I started getting picked on because I was skinny, I started hitting the gym, started hitting the weights, and I never looked back. But I still wouldn't develop like my peers. It seems like people who would put in even half the effort that I did would gain twice the size and have, twice the response. Other people were just more mature and consequently, again, I was picked on. I was always trying to please everybody, and I was just kind of walked on when I was younger. So I took my first, I started taking testosterone at an early age at about 23. And I immediately, I hyper responded. I put on about 32 pounds of muscle and 100 pounds on my bench press in about 5 weeks. It was a completely different life. I mean, not only did I physically respond, but my energy, my confidence, everything just went through the roof. So, I wanted to find out, exactly what this was. Why did I feel so good? Why was this so different? My life was like, I lived 2 different lives, one before testosterone and one after. And the one after was just a dramatic improvement. I would walk into a bar and it seemed like the crowd would part away from me. Like everybody's kind of head would turn suddenly. And, I was finally respected. Everybody wanted to befriend me now. I had a job while I was in college as a plumber. I was terrible at the job. I hated it. Suddenly, after I started using testosterone, my boss just gave me a raise for no better reason other than I stood before him looking stout. Again, like everything, just all aspects of my life just changed. So at the time I was in college for biochemistry. So I studied biochemistry in college. And I wanted to figure out, why was this working so well? Like, what is this? Like, what could possibly improve my quality of life like this much? So I really started tailoring my degree to the study of hormones while I was in college. And on my own, I read voraciously. I just wanted to figure out what this was. So I started to become very adept at utilizing these hormones to do whatever we wanted with ourselves, with my body. And then, invariably, a few of my friends just came and said, look at you, you've made a complete change. How did you do that? I want to do it. So I started showing other people how to do it. And eventually, like I started gaining a lot of respect I lived in a small city. I started gaining a lot of respect that way by helping people dramatically improve the quality of their life. So eventually I started to monetize that. I developed supply chains for testosterone and its derivatives. I was helping people. Again, I lived in a small city, so it's not like I made a lot of money. I still wasn't doing very well. I was just a poor college student. Eventually, one of my clients told me about this online site where you can actually buy this. Now, this is before it was as popular as it is today. So this was like back in like 2010, 2011. he told me about this online forum where you could go and you could, purchase steroids. And so I went and checked it out, and I started researching it, and I thought, man, I had really good supply chains at the time. My prices were really good, so I could compete with anybody on here. Really did a lot of research, and I decided to do it. Again, I wasn't making a lot of money. I think at this time I was out of college, and I was I was hardly able to get by. So I decided to just try this online thing. When I was doing this, I think I worked in an emergency room in a hospital. Again, not making much money, barely able to make ends meet. So I started to do this online, and I was hoping that I could make maybe $200 or $300 extra a week. If I could do that, then I would be comfortable, and I would be, I'd be really good. So I was really hoping, but I thought that was going to be too much. I just didn't think there was too much to this online thing. I didn't think, again, it was going to turn into anything. And I thought that $200 or $300 extra a week was overzealous. So I just went in there with pretty simple business practices. I was going to undercut everybody in the market. I was going to give quality products, and I was going to do fast shipping. At that time, fast shipping wasn't a thing. People used to ship products to their clients, and it would take like 2 weeks, if not longer. And I would get my products to the clients in 2 or 3 days. Again, lower prices, high quality. Well, my brand just absolutely blew up online. Like the next thing I know, again, it just blew up, and I didn't even know what hit me. I was just working hard. The next thing you know, I'm just working 12 hours days, even longer, 15-hour days nonstop. And I'm pulling in within 6 months, I was pulling in $30,000 a week. And I had to expand. I had to get help because I couldn't do it by myself. So I built this pretty large operation that spanned a bunch of different states, developed these shipping operations, developed these chemist operations. And then, by the end, we were pulling in 100,000 a week and more than that by the end, depending on the week, depending on the time of year. But it just turned into this multi-million-dollar empire. Now, I say that, so, eventually it came to a head. So I'll get here first. So eventually it came to a head. And in 2015, I was indicted by Operation Cyberjuice. And so I was arrested and I went to prison. I got out of prison about 1.5 years ago. And, and I've been working to, so, I tell you all of that story just to tell you this now that, again, I broke the law. And for those actions, I am accountable, and I understand that. But, no but. I understand that what I gained from all of that is I was able to aggregate more empirical data than any physician, any urologist, any endocrinologist, just because of the vast numbers of people I was able to guide and help see the results. I looked at a ton of blood work. I actually saw what everything was doing. So, in an unregulated market, I was able just to learn how to do this to a vast and immense level that nobody else without my history could have possibly done. Right. So again, now this becomes a story of redemption because I understand that I broke the law before. I understand I am accountable for those actions. I want to do this in a legal and legit manner. Now I want to use all of the knowledge I aggregated in a legal and legit manner to help people. Because mainly the money was good. I made a lot of money, but it wasn't the money that really pushed me forward to keep going and build that giant empire. It was helping people. Like I used to get emails every single day from people, and I still do, from legally helping people like I do now. I get emails every day saying, thank you for helping me become a better husband to my wife, or in the cases of females, a better wife to my husband, a better father or mother to my children, and a better supporter of my family. And that is what really drove me on. I really appreciate helping people, and I developed a passion for helping people in this unique way. So again, back to, what my story offers me, or it gives me a unique perspective in this industry. I learned how to use derivatives. The medical community does not know how to use derivatives. The bodybuilding community, and again, a lot of the people I guided were professional bodybuilders, and I used to design for 1,000 professional bodybuilders. I designed I'm around 1,000. I designed their hormone treatments to put them on stage. Right. Again, now it's about healthy, safe use of these hormones. I want to do this in a healthy and safe, legitimate manner. But again, I was afforded the ability to see this on such a vast level. Now, for the medical community, due to the path of demonization that testosterone and its derivatives have taken since the 1980s, right? It became illegal or banned from all professional sports, and it became a controlled substance in the 1990 Steroid Control Act. And in that time, it also got lumped in with the war on drugs, right? It got lumped in with all the other drugs like, cocaine, heroin, everything. It was part of, the drugs that were just making everything illegal at that time. And testosterone got an unfair stigma attached to it, because of that. Therefore, the medical community has chosen to eschew these compounds. They eschew testosterone and its derivatives. They don't really learn about it in medical school. The fact that it became illegal made it difficult, if not impossible, to research them. Right? It's a lot more difficult to research. So the medical community just, again, they don't learn about it. They don't, and when you go to medical school, you study a broad range of topics, right? And very little of it. What little information they do learn about testosterone is antiquated notions and dogma from decades ago. So going back to, again, I studied biochemistry in college. I tailored my degree to this. I have studied this field for over 2 decades, solely this specific field for over 2 decades, and I've aggregated more empirical data than almost anyone in the country could have, unless they had my history. Right. So, so it comes to me wanting to use that to really help people. Again, it's a story of redemption. I want to do this legally and legitimately, and I have the tools to do that just because I've seen it on such a vast level. So that's a history.
It's a great story. Thanks for sharing again.
Thank you.
So, today we wanted to talk about the inadequacy of the free hormone hypothesis. So let's talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Okay. Yeah. So again, because testosterone was so hard to research, and its derivatives, right? It was so hard to research that I can see areas where the medical community is just behind. And it's behind in a lot of different areas. Even the fact that there's such a because of the stigma on testosterone, right? It's just, there's an overabundance of caution. It's the protocols are wrong. It's misused and it's underutilized, right? If there's a miracle drug, then I believe it's testosterone, right? I believe it fits the definition of miracle drug. But if you have this miracle drug that is so stigmatized and there's an overabundance of caution and then it can just kind of blow over without the greater community noticing or understanding how much it can really benefit people, just because of fear, right? It's just fear-based. It's defensive medicine. It's fear-based. So, I can see a lot of these things just from my experience, right? So, my experience about just how the various ways, and there's a multitude, and I'm just going to go over one today. One of the ways that the medical community just has this wrong is I really started researching into the free hormone hypothesis, because you hear all of this, and everything you read from the Endocrine Society, states that. So the free hormone hypothesis is a facile and oversimplified understanding of the hormones. What it says is that testosterone binds to SHBG and albumin, and the free testosterone is what's bioactive and what binds to the androgen receptor, and then the androgen receptor then goes to have its cascade effects. But the free hormone is the bioactive. Um, again, this is it's facile and oversimplified. They don't explain anything what happens with testosterone that binds to SHBG. It's just the assumption is just that it's nullified. It just has no effect. And so the free hormone hypothesis was devised from studies that went on from the 1950s to the 1980s. So again, it's like antiquated information. And that's where it came from. It came from all these studies. Interestingly enough, these studies did indicate, the same studies they used to develop the free hormone hypothesis did indicate that that there was evidence that SHBG and albumin and binding proteins played a more significant role, but it was just not well known exactly what. But despite all this other evidence, despite all these assumptions, the free hormone hypothesis was just espoused by the medical community. So, I'll go on now to explain. And I've never seen this. I've heard people. I've even heard Gil come on your show and explain that, well, SHBG is important, and obviously he's right. But I've never heard it explained and broken down, a deep dive taken into it to explain exactly how and why these hormones are utilized, or in the cognate binding proteins are utilized with it. So I'll start to explain that now. Okay, so there's two other binding proteins that are never mentioned: corticosteroid binding globulin, or CBG, and erosomucoid. Both of these proteins also bind testosterone. Early theory was that CBG bound about 4% of free testosterone. Recent studies, in vitro studies, in the presence of cortisol, have indicated that CBG actually binds closer to 15.4% of testosterone. It binds a much more significant portion of testosterone than originally believed. So an indication of this would be like, well, especially with some of the free testosterone calculations, like there could be a lot less free testosterone than the calculations will show. Because this completely, calculations and other tests completely ignore this, right? Erosomucoid is another protein. It binds lipophilic compounds. Lipophilic means tending to bind to lipids, fats, or oils. Testosterone is very lipophilic. It's especially lipophilic before the cypionate ester is cleaved. So when we're injecting cypionate into us, that's incredibly lipophilic. That's why it's actually in an oil base, right? It's dissolved in an oil base. So who know? And the thing is, we don't know. What does that mean? Like, so this erosomucoid is binding probably especially the cypionate. When you inject testosterone into ourselves, it's binding the cypionate ester. And what does it do? We don't know. But it could throw off all kinds of calculations, and we don't know. But we just know that it does bind to that. Okay, the next thing is albumin. Okay, so everybody understands albumin. Testosterone binds to albumin. The theory is that, or this is what the free hormone hypothesis states, is that one testosterone molecule binds to one albumin, and there's a very low binding affinity, so it's still bioavailable, right? Albumin. So let's get to the truth about albumin. Albumin has 3 binding pockets, right? So more than one testosterone molecule can bind to albumin. Also, there's 2 variants of albumin: albumin catania and albumin roma. Albumin roma has been shown to have a low binding affinity to testosterone, but we're unknown about the binding affinity of albumin catania to testosterone. It may be stronger. We don't know. So the multiple binding sites on albumin, they bind with what's called allostery. Allostery means that one testosterone will bind to an albumin such that the second testosterone that binds to the same albumin molecule will undergo a conformational change so that the binding affinity changes, right? So now we have 2 testosterone bound to one albumin, and the binding affinities have changed and are different for each testosterone molecule on the albumin. And so what all that means is that there's no longer a 1-to-1 binding affinity. So a lot of these a lot of these the calculations are calculated testosterone assumes a 1-to-1. I'm sorry, a binding 1-to-1 binding stoichiometry, which means that one testosterone binds to one albumin. So albumin binds multiple testosterone molecules. So the calculations are off right there, and the bioavailability of testosterone is in question from being bound to albumin. Now we don't really know how strong that second binding pocket is. It could be, so the bioavailability is in question. Is it as bioavailable as we thought? That's the problem. We don't know. So that's albumin. Now let's go to SHBG. So this is a big one too. This is a really big one. SHBG is a homodimeric protein, which means it's made up of two identical subunits. Right? Each subunit binds a testosterone molecule. So one SHBG binds two testosterone molecules. Again, they also bind with allostery. So binding to one of the testosterone binding sites on SHBG, the second testosterone that binds to the same SHBG undergoes a conformational change, and the binding affinity changes. Right? Mm-hmm. That means that the binding of testosterone to SHBG, the affinity is different, and it may be less. Testosterone may be able to give up, or SHBG may be able to dissociate. I'm sorry, I got to say this correctly. Testosterone may be able to dissociate from SHBG easier than previously thought. So again, there's a lot of questions. Again, going back, the free hormone hypothesis is that one SHBG binds to one testosterone, and it binds with this constant, really strong affinity. And again, then it was ignored as to what happens to SHBG after that. I don't even know what they assumed. They just ignored it. Like they assumed that it's just gone and done, and testosterone bound SHBG just disappears apparently. And we know that it doesn't. So again, SHBG and albumin are both transport proteins, right? Testosterone in males is made in the testicles. In females, it's made in the ovaries and the adrenal glands, right? So we have to transport it from here to the cells throughout the body. Even in the brain, there's androgen receptors throughout your entire body. So it's a transport protein, meaning that it has to transport testosterone, right? And if it just bound if SHBG just bound testosterone and just held it until it was filtered out by the kidneys, it would be called a suicide protein, right? Or a jail cell protein, or a suicide protein, right? So because we already, so it kind of shows that testosterone bound SHBG, it was oversimplified. They didn't think about it. It's a transport protein. It has to bring it somewhere. So here's one of the big things that I've never seen broken down. Now you can find this information in studies, and I have a few studies that I've looked at, but I've never seen it actually presented. So testosterone bound SHBG is utilized by cells. It can be used through 3 different mechanisms. So it can bind to a protein on the cell surface called megalin, right? So SHBG bound testosterone binds to this megalin. It's then internalized by the cell, taken up by a lysosome, and the acidity in the lysosome dissociates the protein from the SHBG. Now remember, there's 2 testosterone in SHBG. It dissociates both testosterone from SHBG, and then those bind to the androgen receptor in the cell, right? So again, before, all we did was we took testosterone bound SHBG and we just nullified it and says, okay, that doesn't matter. That's not used. Well, it is used. So in that case, our total testosterone number, and especially the testosterone bound by SHBG, is much more important than previously thought, right? It's used, it's utilized, and it's necessary. And I'm going to go on to tell you exact other things that it does and why it's even more necessary. Testosterone can also bind to another protein on the cell surface called fibulin and integrin on the cell surface. These are attached to a G-coupled protein, which then can cause the production of CAMP and PKA. cyclic adenosine monophosphate, and protein kinase A, right? Protein kinase A can phosphorylate androgen receptors, which this means is that the androgen receptor becomes it becomes more available. Its frequency. So what that does is it improves the process of creating androgen receptors, right? So it makes it increases the frequency of the amount of androgen receptors that are produced, right? So now we have a higher frequency androgen receptors. Another thing that it does is it increases the binding affinity of testosterone to the androgen receptor. So not only do we have more androgen receptors, we have an increased binding affinity, which means more testosterones can more easily bind to androgen receptors. This whole thing increases androgen sensitivity. So now again, we have testosterone. SHBG is important because it increases androgen sensitivity for the cells. Interestingly enough, too much free testosterone without the presence of SHBG. So if we have too high free testosterone, your body will actually downregulate the amount of androgen receptors. So we lower the frequency of androgen receptors, decreasing androgen sensitivity. So too much free testosterone, causes androgen desensitized androgen sensitivity, right? And so in the presence of SHBG, though, we actually increase that. So that's why SHBG is important. It helps us utilize the efficiency of testosterone. So the third way that SHBG bound testosterone is used I'm sorry, I think I did all three of them, right? I did. It's internalized by the cell, it binds to megalin, and it binds to integrin and fibrillin. Yeah, so I did all three of them. Okay, so now we see that. So what does this all mean? It means that, well, actually, you know what? Let me go on to now the free testosterone calculations or free testosterone tests. So the best test for testing free testosterone is called equilibrium dialysis, right? Equilibrium dialysis is a very difficult test to run. It's very expensive. It's difficult, and it's prone to a lot of inaccuracies, right? So the results of equilibrium dialysis are unreliable and untrustworthy because it's a difficult test to run. Again, it's expensive. Therefore, the Endocrine Society put out a memo stating that because of paraphrasing, because of the difficulty of using equilibrium dialysis to directly test free testosterone in the blood, then calculated free testosterone using an algorithm that calculates free testosterone using SHBG, albumin. And then, again, this same test assumes a one-to-one binding stoichiometry, that one testosterone binds to one SHBG and one albumin. And it assumes a constant binding affinity, not different binding affinities of each binding pocket on SHBG and albumin. So therefore, the Endocrine Society recommended this, and this is what a lot of the labs do. They just calculate it using an algorithm instead of using equilibrium dialysis because it's too difficult. And all the rest of the blood tests to have a direct blood test of free testosterone are less accurate than equilibrium dialysis. So they're all very inaccurate. But with this calculated, especially with testosterone, 2 molecules of testosterone being bound to SHBG and possibly up to three being bound to albumin, and the binding affinities being different than with the algorithm than we have in the algorithms, the calculation for free testosterone can be off by over 50% and maybe off by over 50%. So, any free testosterone, even though the idea of free testosterone is important, the free testosterone metrics are wildly unreliable, right? So what does this all mean? It means that we have to pay attention to total testosterone, and a high number of total testosterone is important because we have to pay attention to SHBG. So a high range testosterone, a mid-range SHBG. Again, if we have too much SHBG, then your free testosterone is going to be lower. People are going to have symptoms of hypogonadism. Free testosterone is important. It's just not the most important metric. And another thing that a lot of people don't understand, if you have too high a testosterone and low SHBG, and so you have really high free testosterone, your body will downregulate those androgen receptors, and you won't feel right. You won't be optimal. Mm-hmm. So SHBG is important. Again, it's going to be different for everybody. So there's no way I can say, we want this exact number and this exact number. But generally, a lot of people want higher end range total T and mid range SHBG around there. And it's going to be different for everybody. But one of the more important things that nobody had before this has really understood, and especially the free hormone hypothesis does not explain, is that the testosterone bound SHBG is very important for our well-being, for being optimal. So we really have to pay attention to that, and it's important. It's important to know that when we're developing protocols for testosterone therapy.
Mm-hmm. Still, I hear a lot of providers online and on YouTube say, when your total testosterone doesn't matter, we need to know what your free testosterone is. So we just can't say they are plain wrong then.
That is absolutely correct. So it's plain wrong. And you and I know, and anybody else who has been in this industry for a long time, who has a vast amount of knowledge, understands that if you even have a mid-level 400 or 500 testosterone, and even if you have mid-level free testosterone, even sometimes higher end free testosterone, you're still going to have, a lot of people still have symptoms of hypogonadism. Mm-hmm. Because it's a lot of it is still about, there's still a lot of different things, androgen sensitivity of the individual, but what we're in line with what we're talking about now, it's more about you need enough testosterone bound SHBG, and total testosterone in the 400 or 500s, even with mid-level free testosterone, is just not enough. You're not utilizing enough testosterone bound SHBG for your cells for you to be optimal.
Right. So what practical applications does this all have for the average man on TRT? The first thing that comes to my mind is don't lower SHBG, right?
Right. Yeah. So so high SHBG can still cause problems. It's noted to cause inflammatory conditions, and it lowers your free testosterone to the point where you're experiencing symptoms of hypogonadism. Right. So it is important. So again, it's more about a ratio of testosterone to SHBG. So if you have high SHBG, and I guess the first thing a lot of people look for is to lower your SHBG. Certainly there's some different methods for that, including boron and certain diet practices, but also maybe increasing your testosterone a little bit more and because a bolus of testosterone will also lower your SHBG, but it also raises your total testosterone, which can get you better in line with that ratio of testosterone to SHBG that you need. So those are some things for people with high SHBG. Now, what I come across a lot is people with too low SHBG. And prior to understanding what I just explained, nobody really dealt with that. It was just kind of like, I don't know why you feel bad. You have high total testosterone and high free testosterone. Well, that causes problems. Right? We're lowering our androgen sensitivity. And so methods to increase your SHBG should be taken. We can do this by decreasing sugar. Insulin crushes SHBG. High fiber diets, get a high fiber cereal, eat it every morning, or even Metamucil, take 1, 2, 3 times a day, whatever you need to do. High fiber diet will increase your lower sugar. That's the first thing we try. If that fails, then we can look at if you're a candidate for thyroid hormones, increase the production of SHBG. So we can look at using thyroid hormones to help you.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of bodybuilders also take proviron into their cycles. That's also to lower SHBG. So that's a bad idea then?
Yeah, and again, depending on where your SHBG is, if you have high SHBG and you're trying to lower it, then that may not be a bad thing. But for a lot of people, and this is a problem too that has gotten kind of unrealized, is people are crushing their SHBG and it's going down too low. And you see people will have symptoms of, they just don't feel optimal. And it's unrelated to estrogenic side effects too. So it's not like, okay, we'll just lower your dose and you'll feel better, because it's not estrogenic side effects. It's just, again, it's a function of too much free testosterone. And there's another thing that we didn't discuss here, that your body, what calls glucuronidates testosterone, glucuronidation, where your body will actually put a glucuride molecule, attach it to testosterone, and then it becomes invalid, or it's not utilized by cells, so then it's filtered out by your kidneys. Or your liver. It's filtered out by your liver, right? So your body can do that as well. So too much free testosterone, we're lowering your androgen sensitivity. Your body's more apt to go through glucocorridation to invalidate a lot of these testosterone. So they're filtered out by your liver, and so like it causes problems. So again, the SHBG is important to increase androgen sensitivity, to keep it from, keep your free testosterone in a certain range. And it's a lot more important than we previously thought.
Yeah. So practically, if we have labs done, we shouldn't even ask for calculated free testosterone, right? So
that's what I would say, and that's what I do. I don't need to see your free testosterone number, right? I just look at the total testosterone in the SHBG, and again, because you're right, the calculation is so prone to variability and prone to error that it doesn't mean a lot. The concept of free testosterone is important, but those calculations are so off that. That you can tell. Again, you just look at the testosterone and SHBG, and that's all I look at, and I can get an idea of where you are and what you need.
Awesome. Thank you so much for explaining, Ryan. Before we close this interview, can you share your social media maybe with the viewers?
Oh, sure. I think below in the description, but yeah, I have okay, yeah, I have hormonesforme.com. I'm actually just newly partnering with some more providers to be able to provide people with TRT. Hormonesforme.com. Again, as I increase the amount of states that I can service, then I will put those states on the website, and hopefully pretty soon we'll increase to the whole country. I have my YouTube channel, which will be linked below, where I'm just going to, I have, different videos, different educational videos. And I do have a book that I started reading about my story. It kind of goes into a lot of detail of the story I told in the beginning, and it goes into great detail. I've always had a passion for the English language. I minored in English. So I've always been interested in writing, and I've always been adept at it as well. But this story actually came out even better than I thought it would. So it's actually really good. And that will be linked below too. You can actually read the story.
Okay.
That's about it.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Ryan, and talk to you next time.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Davis. And I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
No problem. Thanks. Check out my TRT workout split or the ebook The Ultimate Guide to TRT Cream. Links to the merchandise shop in the description.